everybody. Welcome back to Travel Talk. I know I did a short little recap a couple weeks back from my India tour, but I'm delighted to say that this is our first official Travel Talk back since my vacation, I guess you could say. So I'm really excited. For the first one out the gates after my little hiatus, I have prepared something really special for you with Paula from In My Kitchen. Paula is here today to help us plan a one-of-a-kind experience trip tour through food, connecting culture and experience with food and the destinations you're traveling to. So I'm going to bring Paula on in just a moment, but as well at the end of Paula's presentation, I am going to walk you guys briefly through our upcoming tours that we have that feature gastronomy and food. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Paula onto the stage here. Hello, Paula, can you hear us?
I can. Hi, Allie. Thanks for having me. I'm great. I'm super excited to be here and speaking with the community from the Women's Travel Club. I'm Paula Mohammed. And Allie, I think the easiest thing is just to dive right in and we'll get to it.
Let's get this presentation up on the stage and you can take it away.
All right. So 4 steps to planning a one-of-a-kind trip through food. Now, this evolved, just a little bit of background, this evolved from decades of event production, believe it or not, and a lot of traveling and a passion for connecting through food and to people and the places that I visited. So I basically took one specific tool that I created in my 20 plus years of event production that I used to sort of plan and put a framework around those events. And I use it now in traveling. It's evolved and it's changed. So I hope you enjoy this. Remember, this is my perspective, my stories. I tend to go on a bit. So at any time, give me a wave, Allie. I could talk and tell stories for ages. So if I go off on a tangent, feel free to reel me back. So I'm sure you're all here because you love to travel the world. This is super exciting for me actually to give this talk to like-minded women who are coming from the same place I am. Actually, this is my mom in this photo. She is, that's a whole other talk, but a huge inspiration for me from cooking to travel. I think she's almost 80 here and was keeping up with all of us on the waves. So what if you could free yourself from a rigid itinerary and just discover on the go? And that's what we're going to kind of delve into a bit. I'm going to share with you my process for doing that. What if you can experience a deeper connection to the people and places you visit? So we know there's all this science now, right, out behind the importance of connection. And it's something that I pursued, especially when traveling, but it all happened very naturally. You know, it's not something that I put a label on or certainly didn't put a framework on, but from my experiences and just as I've gotten older in life, I can look back on this now and you see the value and I'm hoping that just sharing my process helps you to create deeper connections if that's what you're seeking, or I'm sure many of you are already doing that. So I'm here to say it's all possible and I'm going to show you my way through food. So of course, this could be a framework. You could do this through sports. There's lots of different ways to connect, but I'm going to share with you why I'm passionate about exploring culture through food. So today I'm going to share my story and my connection to food, travel, and culture. This is where I could go on for a long time. So I'm going to try and hold back on too many stories. And then we're going to get into a little bit of sort of my 4 steps to exploring culture through the lens of food. And then I'm persistently curious about other people and the stories. So if we have time, I really would love to hear from you. If you have any questions for me, I'm pretty much an open book, so this could go any way, but I'm going to leave it to you, Allie, to let us know at what point we got to rein that in or if it's for another time. So my story, like, who am I? Why am I here? So my name's Paula Lee Mohammed, and I'm coming to you from Vancouver, Canada. I was actually born here in the 70s and then lived in New Zealand from when I was about 9 to 14. And then as a family, we came back to right into the heart of Vancouver. So I grew up in this very diverse cultural household. My father was from Pakistan. He immigrated to Vancouver when he was 18 and went to a local high school here for 1 or 2 years. And then my mom's from New Zealand. And we have Maori background. So Maori is how a lot of people say it. Right back to where, as a growing up, I loved this story. Again, another talk. But my great-great-great-grandfather was a Maori chief. So you can just see how I grew up in this household where we shared all these stories. Both my parents loved to talk and cook, actually. And there was never anything that said, Paula, we want you to, look beyond the color of somebody's skin. We want you to accept it. You just lived it. Like, we just lived in this culturally rich, diverse household. I loved it. One quick story, my first food memory, I was 4 years old, and my bibi, so that's my dad's mother, so my grandmother, she was very traditional. She was a very traditional Muslim woman, a lovely, lovely woman. And I remember sitting in her apartment in Vancouver, looking through the little butler window into her kitchen. And I hated peas. Like, I just hated peas. That was my one food I never liked. And I had the first smells of I distinctly remember the curries, and I could hear the jangling of her bracelets, the beautiful Indian glass bracelets, and smelling that masala, I guess, the chicken or the ginger, the garlic, the curry spices. And she served me a bowl of curried peas. And it was one of the best meals I've ever had. And to this day, I remember just that connection I felt to her, to the food, and that warm feeling. I'm now a mother of 2 teenage boys, and they've sort of grown up like this too. And it's fun. They love to cook. As I said, I was a former event producer of 22 years, avid home cook, like many of you, I'm sure, too. And, like many of us, a lover of culture, travel, and adventure. I'm just going to back up a second. So this passion for travel, this background in event production, and this years of traveling that I did when I was younger and starting to do again now, sort of inspired me to start in my kitchen. And what is in my kitchen? So after doing event production for many, many years, it can take its toll. And I had been had this idea in my head for a long time and decided to go for it. So it's a place where I created this platform where I wanted other passionate and knowledgeable home cooks from diverse cultures to be able to share their traditional recipes and have people come and sit down and share a meal together and cook together. So back then, people would sign up online, and then you actually went to the home of the host. And there would be 6 people, some friends, some strangers, but you would cook together, and then everybody would sit down and share the meal together. And you can just imagine, like, the connections that happened. It was wonderful. And the hosts were all vetted, and there was some training. So all that to say, they were very comfortable with sharing their stories and answering any questions people had, and people left there with new friendships and a new understanding of each other. And it was really, really cool. Something I really felt passionate about, especially that hospitality piece where people are being invited into somebody's home versus being served to somebody from a restaurant. Now, with things that happen in the world, we've moved into more virtual experiences, doing talks like this, corporate team building events, and a podcast show, which I'll chat more about later. Just a few of our hosts, just to give you a little taste of it, no pun intended. So Raymond's from Mekong Delta in Vietnam. His family were refugees and came to Canada, to Winnipeg, actually, of all places. GJ from Northern India, Naomi, pro soccer player, amazing cook from Kobe, Japan. Layla from Rasht, Iran. I think I have podcast interviews with all of these guys now, but Layla's is particularly very interesting. And of course, Melissa from Umbria, Italy. Okay, so before we get into the 4 steps, I didn't spend my backpacking in Europe for 6 months with, okay, what are my principles? This is now looking back, and it's like, how did I evolve and develop this connection that I really consciously seek when I'm traveling? So what I realized is I literally marinate in the culture beforehand. So for me, if I can, I like to immerse myself in where I'm going to be going. So it becomes sort of a hobby on its own. And I know many of us do this. And I realized for me, it's because I don't have the luxury now to backpack around Europe for 6 months. I don't have that time. It's usually 2 weeks, 3 weeks if I'm lucky. Now I'm on the well, still the younger side of 54, the early side of 54, but needless to say, my life is shifting, that I'm looking forward to more longer trips. But what I realize is I like to get there and already feel like I'm immersed in the culture as much as possible. And so the culture shock is not too significant, that it takes me my week of travels to kind of feel like, that feeling when it's like, oh, it takes a few days to unwind and really get into it. So I'm impatient, I'm impulsive a little bit. I try and do it ahead of time. And at the same time, if you think of like a line that connects the dots, I like to get rid of those dots and literally let things bend a little bit. So as much as I did all of this event planning, I don't plan every detail ahead of time. I've learned to let things unfold, and it allows me to embrace spontaneous discovery. Now, I do want to say that this isn't what happens for every trip. I mean, I was in New Zealand where I used to live, and that's a completely different trip. That's about connecting with family. That's like my great aunts are there. That's different. I'm not necessarily, this was all happening anyway. In March, I was in Japan with my son who's graduating. This did happen to a certain, like, this is, I was like, oh, this is great. I'm doing this. So depends. And then we'll chat about next is kind of the steps that I do to do this. So first of all, get organized. So I know about myself is I tend to just go and do things. And after 20 plus years of doing event production, you learn pretty quickly that you have to have systems. And what I've learned for myself is those systems help me feel more confident to let things be more spontaneous. So for me, it's that organization is freedom. And again, it changes, right? It changes where I'm going, my comfort level, what I'm doing. But we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. And again, this is all my perspective. So I hope this is something that you can take one little bit away from, or some idea or something, but everybody has their own way. This is pretty self-explanatory. I'm not one to go. I dream about going to the airport one day with like a bag and just picking where I'm going, and hasn't happened yet. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I do dream about it. I love airports. We could talk about that for another talk too. Visas. So you might think, yeah, Paula, pretty obvious. You got to plan ahead. Well, I've been going to New Zealand all my life. And this past year, they've imposed Canadians need visas, you may know, to go to New Zealand and Australia. So it wasn't on my checklist, but we got it sorted out. And then the rest of it's pretty self-explanatory. I'll talk a little bit about my system. Freestyle. So for me, people often say, Paula, you're such a foodie. What restaurant should we go to? And I keep correcting people. I don't consider myself a foodie. I love the store. Don't get me wrong. I love food. But I'm actually not that person that's going to know which Michelin stars to go to, or the latest restaurants, hottest restaurants in Vancouver. But I will talk to the person who owns that restaurant, or find out the stories behind those dishes and those recipes. So that's what I'm more about. So that's really the only reason why I'm not necessarily booking restaurants in advance, because I get a little bit of FOMO that I'm going to have a fear of missing out on something. Cultural excursions and tours. Again, I don't like to lock myself into something in case something else happens. That's why I do think like these clubs, like the Women's Travel Club, I love it because this is kind of done for you, but you also get that balance of your own time as well. So, right. Every trip you do, maybe
try to make sure that there's a balance. And even with including meals, not every tour has every meal included. And that's kind of to give that sense of freestyle freedom to, step out on your own for dinner one night and experience a new restaurant or something like that. Even with the tour inclusions, if you're not too keen on the museum that we're going to that day, it's not necessary. There's always, we try to enforce that balance for our members.
Yeah. And I love that when I was looking at your itineraries, and, it also frees you up to have to sort of check those pieces off. So it allows you to have that marinating process a little bit. We're all strapped for time a little bit. So it allows you to kind of relax into it more as well. And, maybe not every trip you do is with the Women's Travel Club. You might be venturing off on your own sometime as well. And I just, that pre-planning gives you that confidence to to dance on tables sometimes. Who knows? Who knows what'll happen when you're gone? So the others are, again, this is me. I have found in my trips, cooking classes abroad have been like life changing. Like I absolutely love it. My vision within my kitchen was to scale it around the world, you know, all these kind of things. So it's not to say I don't do this and I don't seek it out. But again, I kind of like to, I don't have the luxury of the experience that Allie and her team have and those relationships. So I don't want to lock into something that everyone's doing on Instagram and miss out on an experience from somebody that I might meet. Okay, these are pretty straightforward. I'm going to just tell you how I use them. So just a simple manila folder, just have something that you just throw things into. That I do for a good chunk of my travels, especially if there's not too much else going on, if it's just if I'm staying in one place. What I've done since, I wish I could show it to you. I've had a travel journal since my late teens, early 20s. And I came across one that I started when I was in New Zealand, when I was 18. And I actually collected the recipes from my great aunts and then wrote about what was happening. And so when I'm telling you that this is sort of my way, like it really is something that I've lived, I've just done because I truly am passionate about the stories behind the recipes. And I was so lucky to grow up with these great aunts and my BB. So New Zealand farm life to Pakistan, saris and curries, you know, like it was just, I was so lucky. And it's led to some really cool experiences later in my life. So what I do, though, if you do use a travel journal, is don't hesitate to use it as your planning tool beforehand as well. So I like to, for me, writing is a way I process things or kind of get, you know, my ideas on, and then I sift through it. So that's what I use the back of my journal for as I'm planning a trip. So for example, Japan, it's like, okay, these are the areas that I want to go to. This is why. And it's, from that, my trip ends up being maybe 5% of what I was jotting down, but it's just a way for me to process things. I'm not one that can just sort of have it all in my head and then pull things out. Mm-hmm. And digital spreadsheets. So not everybody's into using going digital, but I have to say this is a tool, again, the one that I was talking about, and there's a link to it in the chat as well. This is a tool that has evolved out of decades of producing, you know, large scale events like international sports events. So I've tweaked it and it's evolved, but it's if you like spreadsheets and you like having it available on the go, do check it out. And I have found it, I've been using it more and more in the last, I would say 7 or 8 years, and it's changed quite a bit, but I'll chat more about it later as well. But see what you think. There is actually there's 3 tabs. One of the tabs is just a checklist because I was so tired of every trip having to remember all the things that I have to remember. So I was just, you can make it your own, but now I just go, boom, there's a checklist. Okay, done. And then for me, Gmail and notes. So all of my travel correspondence and planning, Gmail, I love it because you can just make notes. So I go back to trips from 2000 and I can't remember when I was looking at, I think 2013, so 11 years ago. And it was a trip to France and we're thinking about going there. And I was like, oh, where did we go? And I could just put in France 2013, boom, it all came up. And notes, if you use an iPhone, you can just dictate on the go. If you're having coffee with a friend, you got to go to this place. I dictate it into my notes or I just write it on, and then it eventually finds its way into my system. Okay, yeah, so this is the travel planner that I was talking about. So there's 3 tabs to it. There's a planning one. There's one where you can have all your information. So for example, in Japan, we were in the middle of nowhere. We were renting bikes and I could just pull up my phone and it's in my Google Sheets and there's the confirmation number because language was a big barrier. And again, it'll be helpful to some of you, not for some of you, but it's there if you want to explore it. Okay, this is my favorite thing to do. And I hope I'm sure there's many of you are like, yes, this is what I do as well. So I like to read food-focused books. I seek out historical fiction, like in the country that I'm going to. So for example, which way? This way. Hawaii by James M. Michener. Have you read it, Allie? No. Okay. This is Crack This Open. I did this about 12 years ago on my first morning in Hawaii. And there's nothing like reading a book that takes you through the historical evolution of the place that you're in while you're there drinking your Kona coffee. Like that's being immersed in it. And I love it. So I like to do that when I'm there, but also beforehand, I love finding books that are got recipes sprinkled into them. And those recipes since, well, when I lived in Portugal for a little bit when I was 20, and I'll tell you what I did with that recipe. It was really neat. So actually, I just want to show you this one. I don't know if anyone here from Canada remembers Barbara Jo McIntosh. She was a restaurateur in Canada, in Vancouver, actually. She's now living in France. But this book, Cooking for Me and Sometimes You, I just going to read you a little excerpt because this defines what I just love. Okay, so it's a bit of a love story in her time in Paris. My evening is gentle, one complete with reading and cooking, right? Perfect night. I enjoy a simple dinner of chicken livers sauteed in butter and rosé wine with crispy shallots, accompanying a salad of blood oranges with red romaine lettuce and ruby beets. Just before I retire, the telephone rings. It is Enrique. Saint Valentine's wishes are extended, and he advises he'll be back in Paris on Wednesday. My dreams are sweet, and today love is beautiful. And then it's the recipes for everything that she just talked about. Yeah, I just love it. And then going in a little bit of a different tangent, Isabella Allende, Aphrodite. So this is a book with recipes. It's a story, and it's her kind of a biography, but it's sprinkled with recipes using herbs and spices that are aphrodisiacs. And it's super interesting. And I always thought, I read that many, many years ago. I thought this is such a great book. And the recipes were very interesting. It wasn't like I was seeking out aphrodisiacs. That wasn't the point, but it was just a cool concept. I recently listened to a podcast with her, and it kind of shattered the book a little bit for me, but it's on Julie Louis-Dreyfus, Wiser Than Me. So she's from Elaine from Seinfeld. She has this great podcast show, and she interviewed Isabel Allende, and Isabel talks about this book, and she said she goes, oh yeah, I wrote this book, like herbs and spices for aphrodisia. It's like, whatever. And, it kind of like, I was like, oh, okay. But her story's in here, and it was coming out of a difficult time for her. So it is actually a very interesting read, and the recipes are well tested and they're good. And so as you can see, it's not cookbooks. So it's a little bit different. It's not about the how or the technique, but it's that story. So coming back to the recipe. So what I do is if I find a really good recipe, or I'm like, oh, I love that, I'll put it in my organization tool, whatever that might be. And say it's in my journal, or I take a photo of it and stick it in my digital spreadsheet. And then I take that with me to my trip, and I go to the markets, and I basically will use that and cook that meal abroad. So just to back up, when I travel, I love to, do VRBOs, or a place where I have a kitchen and I can cook. Also, that doesn't happen. Like in Japan, we never cooked once. We were going to the markets and seeing what was there. But you basically use this recipe as a vehicle to connect with the people who are selling the produce, who are selling the fish. So when I was in Portugal, I was in my early 20s, living there for a little bit. I went to go work at the expo, and then the expo goes bankrupt, like just my luck. And all of a sudden I'm in Portugal alone. I was super shy. I was actually a very shy person. And, but this is what I did. I had this cute little apartment. I took out a line of credit and I stayed there. And I took my recipes, and I would go to the market and I would point, and I ended up being friends with the fishmonger, and I knew the person the vegetables, and for a shy person, it was a way for me to put myself out there and feel like I could connect. And I really did get to know people there, and it became a very comfortable place for me. So I've done that ever since. I always love cooking recipes from the region that I'm in, if possible, and going to the markets, of course. Oh, Pat Conroy's an author, and I just love this quote. A recipe is a story that ends with a good meal. Okay, again, I could talk about books for hours, but now we're getting into another way to get info. And I wasn't someone who listened to podcasts all the time. And if this is going to be redundant for you, or if it's something that you're like not even going to touch podcasts with a 10-foot pole, I just encourage you to explore it a little bit. So I love finding the story, right, that I was talking about. So podcasts are a way that you can, my mom got into podcasts because I had created a podcast show. She said, Paula, they're too long. And, our podcasts are 45 minutes. I'm like, Mom, you don't have to listen to it from start to finish in one go. You can have it in your car. You can do it while you're cleaning, and that's what I love about it. And also you get to hear about where people are spending their time. You can talk, you can hear from the locals what's happening. what I found is that I found a hard time actually finding, these are just some examples. If anyone's going to Japan, these are good podcasts, and mine, of course. But I found it hard. I was finding more podcasts that were talking about the food of the region, or they were interviewing somebody who was a chef, but the person wasn't necessarily from that region. And I was like, I want to know from somebody who lives there. I want to know the stories behind that person. I want to hear what the Nonas have to say. So hence the In My Kitchen with Paula podcast was created. And that's exactly what we do. I seek out people. It's supposed to come out weekly, but it depends on my life. But generally it's sort of every 2 weeks right now. But it's podcasts are a great way to do that, marinate ahead of time, get into the culture, and find out a little bit beyond what everybody's doing, what else is happening. If you're going on, one of the Women's Travel Club trips, say to Tuscany, you might want to listen to our podcast interview with Melissa. Like, that's going to give you so much more insight. So when you're on that tour, you can actually talk. If you're doing a culinary experience, you can ask them, I listened to this podcast. What's your perspective on this? What did your Nona say about this? Because Melissa, she does that. It just gives you more perspectives. I think that's what it comes down to. And I think it's a great way to go. So I was surprised at how many people were like, Paul, I want to listen to your podcast. I have no idea. Don't know how to search for things. So here are some tips. And I'll go through it quite quickly. I do have a little video. So after I did this talk once or twice, people are like, I really would like to, you were too fast though. And I said, no problem. So I made a little 10, 15 second video clip that I can send out that just walks you through it slower. But first of all, about searching. So people will go into their podcast platform. We're just going to use Apple Podcasts for this and use that search tool. But you'll get better results if you actually go into Google and, for example, search podcasts on food and culture in Japan. So this image here, you probably can't see my mouse, but this image is just the Google shot. And then those are the results. So you get more results that way than if you just go into the platform. And then you put that into your Apple Podcasts. So I don't know if you can see the red arrow going down into the right corner. And if you have your iPhone, pull up Apple Podcasts, and you can go through this now. But you then go into that search button, and then up top, you put in the show that you found through Google that you're interested in. Of course, we're going to do In My Kitchen with Paula. And then what comes up, or there's 3 tabs. These are the top results. Then the next tab is you could click on the next tab and it'll show you just the show. And then the third tab will actually show you all the episodes. And then here is, for example, here's an episode. I can't see which one it is there. And if you click on the 3 dots, it takes you into all the episodes. And then you can pick which one you want to watch. Now, people talk about, whatever you see 3 dots in anything to do with social media, click on the 3 dots. It basically opens up more menus. So this gives you an option to follow the show. So what happens then is the podcast show, the new episodes will automatically show up in your library. So you actually have a library of your episodes that you like in your shows. Now, when you hear people at the airport going, "Oh my God, I got to download my podcast shows," you're like, "What do you mean? Paula just showed me how to listen." Well, when you have no cell service and no Wi-Fi, you can actually pull them from up here, and they sit on your phone. And that all you do is you press on the episode. It'll pull up a menu, give you an option to download, or again, find the 3 dots and you can do download. And that will take up memory in your phone, but it's on like your hard drive. It's sitting there that you can go back to and listen to on the airplane. I also love that when you're going somewhere and you're listening to podcast episodes about the place that you're going to. It's pretty cool. Okay, just quickly, because I hope you're all members of the Women's Travel Club Facebook group. I visited it. I think I am a member now, which is exciting, but so much good information there. We have one too, but it's much smaller. But if you want something, it's kind of the same idea. So Facebook groups, if you're not a member, go join Women's Travel Club Facebook group, because it's a wealth of knowledge with like-minded people. You've got people like Allie and her team moderating it. So a couple of tips: you want to join Facebook groups that are private, that make you say yes to the rules. They might ask you why you want to join. That's a bit of a vetting process. But what I do, so before I go traveling, I'll find a couple of Facebook groups. Again, same as the podcast, search in your Google search first, then go check out the Facebook groups, and then I'll follow them. And I'll ask questions, or I just follow them. But it also kind of trains your algorithm. This is just showing you where you, so Greece food and culture, I searched it up on Google, or you can search it up here on Facebook directly. And these are the clubs that show up. And what you can see too, another great vetting process, is you can see that 3 friends of mine are members of the culture and history of Greece. So immediately that tells me, oh, that's a pretty good one to join. Or I might see one that's, say, I don't think there's one there, but if one was posting like 20 times a day, I'm not going to join that because that's just way too much. But I'm actually a member of a few clubs, because for me, that's, if I'm opening up Facebook, that's what I want to, I've learned now at 54, I don't really care what my friend Melissa's 17-year-old has just won provincials. Good for him. That's awesome. But I'd much rather read about Greece or Japan or things like that. So the Facebook will just feed you those things. Same with Instagram. This trip to Japan actually was the first time I really utilized Instagram for travel. And I thought I'd share it with you. This was sort of a last minute add-on to my slideshow. But again, because you can train the algorithm. So start liking, following, and saving things that are relevant to where you're going. So your upcoming trip with Allie's team, you'll see, again, what you're going to see on Instagram is going to be a lot of the trending stuff, but you can save. So what I did, I'll tell you what I did. I save posts. So this is where if you open something, you can save it to a collection. You can name your collection. So I call it Japan. I might have Portugal, and you put it in there. And then I don't think about it again. But at the end of each week, I open up that collection and I delete stuff. Or I take something like, I put that into my research tab on my travel tool, and I'll go down that rabbit hole later on that night or some other time. But it is a great place to find stuff. Again, if anyone's going to Japan, feel free to email me. I got lots of good info. But these were some ones that I saved here. It's kind of hard to show you. I'm happy to walk. If anyone really wants to know how to do this, or you're sitting there going, Paula, I've done this, let's move on. But email me and I'll be happy to walk you through it as well. So I talked a lot. People always say to me, wow, Paula, you can really talk. And then I look and it's been 33 minutes and I feel like I've been talking for 1 minute. I don't know how that happens.
I love it.
So
that's the way to do it, honestly.
But so just looking back, I hope you've sort of seen, you've been invited into my kitchen literally to see my perspective, and I hope I've given you the history and the connection as to where my framework's coming from and how I do things. And if you have any questions, actually, I don't even know if we can ask questions on this platform, Allie. I just realized.
Yes. There is a comment section to ask questions. As well, I just would love to, first of all, I want to say thank you, because I'm sitting here absorbing everything you're saying, trying to, micro plan my future travels and food in my head. So I appreciate you taking the time to sit with us before. I mean, this isn't the end. I just want to say thank you. And I also, just for the people that are here, we discussed doing, some sort of event where we can maybe have one of your hosts join us at the Women's Travel Club and walk us through their cultural experiences and recipes. And I have to say, I kind of already knew what was going on, but after watching the presentation, I can't be more excited about a future collaboration in those terms, because I think a lot of our members would really gain a lot of knowledge and appreciation for the culture and destinations that they're going to, and particularly your one comment about letting it bend. And that's what I really love about travel, is that you have to be able to bend, because if you don't, then you'll break. And with travel, there is a lot of unexpecteds, and we've discussed this in previous travel talks, and letting it bend and being flexible with it. Even though we do have itineraries that seem maybe a little bit much or overwhelming, things happen, weather happens, that stuff that we can't control. And at the end of the day, it's, your tour as the member, and we want to make sure that you're having a great time. So that's, I think, a lot of our ideologies in terms of what makes good travel and what makes a tour and a trip really immersive, kind of coincide with each other. And I'm super happy to have had you here and to collaborate together.
Oh, it was again, like for me, it's so exciting to be in a place where we share the same, values and passions around this, and seeking out those connections. And yeah, and those, like the with our online experiences, we only do private groups now. We've shut down that. You don't have the option to just sign up for a one-off. But what it is it's super fun. Like, again, I tried to bring in the fun part, because that's how I grew up with it. So for example, Melissa, who's from Umbria, I moderate them all, but she starts off with we start off sending you a wine recommendation, and we pop the Lambrusco, and she's talking about her Nona, and we've got the stories, and her and I banter back and forth. We invite other people. So it really is like you're in your kitchen cooking, but it's not technique, and it's very much like
Hanging out.
try to make it like you're literally in my kitchen, hence the name. You can put it all together. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, if anybody has any questions, I encourage you to use the comment box. With that being said, I am going to, if this is the last slide here, am I correct? Okay, because
Yes.
I didn't want to take anything down and with it not being finished. But I'm going to pop up just a little quick slideshow that I've prepared, Travel with Taste with the Women's Travel Club, because as previously mentioned, the reason we're doing this together, we believe that gastronomy and culture are very intertwined, and we try to incorporate that with most of our tours, whether that's a hands-on experience with a cooking class, or if it's just a walking culinary tour of the street food. We want to make sure, Diane's commented here, love this concept for you, Paula. And I agree, Diane, it's a great concept, and something that Paula, I think I've come to understand, is that cooking is not just about, the science, but it's also about the experience and the connection. And at the Women's Travel Club, you guys know as much as I do that we really try to encourage that connection with the culture and the women around you. And that's why you, Paula, have incorporated a lot of travel ideologies into your culinary experiences.
Right. Exactly.
So getting into kind of our upcoming gastronomy, I wouldn't say centered tours, but tours that have those kind of inclusions focused, is for 2024 and 2025. Some notable mentions that aren't specific to food, but that I did want to quickly mention would be Argentina, Chile, and Easter Island. And that one is going from March 3rd to the 15th of 2025. That one is breakfast daily with 2 lunches and 7 dinners included. Now, like we previously talked about, Paula, we do have these itineraries laid out. However, this is completely free for our members to decide if they wish to, indulge in breakfast. Maybe one day you want to go to a cafe that you saw walking down the street the other day and you don't want to have breakfast, at the hotel. It's all about, your journey and your path. With that being said, there's the Rovos Rail African Trilogy Tour. Now, this tour does have quite a few members booked on it right now. It's taken off quite nicely. And that's going from September 30th to October 16th of next year. And that one will include top cuisine and a selection of South Africa's finest wines. So Rovos Rail is a luxury rail tour that travels through the continent of Africa. And on board, you have a luxury dining experience with a chef on board from the cultures mentioned throughout the tour. And you're actually going to be, as you're driving and racing, I guess, through these beautiful landscapes. You're actually experiencing it through taste, sight, sound, the whole lot. So I really wanted to throw those guys in there briefly. Moving forward, just for this year, we have our private Provence Barge River Cruise. Like I said, it is a private one. So this is actually with only Women's Travel Club members. And that means that you have your own private chef on board who is cultivating all these meals specifically for you and the women traveling around you, which I think is beautiful. You will be going on an olive oil production tour and going to Etang de Teau and its oyster farms. So these are more less hands-on, more visual experiences to kind of witness the culture, take it in, absorb it, and then of course you have your private chef to help you experience it. So that is a beautiful tour that we have this year. Following that, moving into 2025, our Vietnam and Cambodia tour going from February 14th to the 18th. That we have a street food tour booked, as well as a Vietnamese cooking demonstration and a noodle cooking class. So something I really, really like about this tour is that you're kind of getting a little bit of everything when it comes to, culinary experiences. You've got the street food tour where you're able to immerse yourself into the local culture. While I was in India, my guide told me, these restaurants are great and stuff, but I eat street food every weekend. And those, like you kind of touch on, Paula, those are the stories and the connections that we really try to amplify when we're traveling and connecting through food. So you've got that street food immersion, you've got the cooking demonstration in Vietnam. So that is a great opportunity for you to hear stories from the people cooking, like Paula does with In My Kitchen. And then we have the noodle cooking class to get your hands-on experience immersed in that culture. Next, we have our signature Portugal tour going from April 1st to the 12th of 25. And this one I think is super cool. We have the private cheese making class. I would love to hear your thoughts on that one, Paula. Like, is that something that you would be interested in going to Portugal?
Oh my God. Yeah. So Portugal, I went to on that 6-month backpacking trip in 1991. I was 21, fell in love with it immediately. It was a very different country than it is now. And then went back there in 1998 and lived there for, I think it was 5 months in Cascais, just half an hour outside of Lisbon. And it is my favorite country. And I've been to quite a few. What I love about Portugal, and again, I know it's become very popular now, but it is like the food seems simple, but it's so delicious. So our family favorite is cataplana mussels. It's in on the coast of Lisbon and Cascais. It's cataplana clams, and cataplana is a type of dome-shaped dish, but we make it all the time now. So yeah, like this would be winery visit with lunch and regional tasting. So it's so funny. A friend of mine's doing her wine levels right now. I don't know what it's called here. I think it's W sets. And she's talking to us and not lecturing, but sharing, educating us on Portuguese wines. I'm like, oh my God, Vino Verde. It's a fantastic, I'm like, this is nothing new, but it's interesting to me to see how it's just coming out. But the wines in Portugal and the port, I mean, it's unbelievable. And people are, listen, the country almost went bankrupt. The expo went bankrupt. And it's because people really enjoy life. Like that's what I found there. They work hard, but there's also, siestas time and so much family time. So we have good friends from Portugal, and you go out at night with the little kids and everybody to the nightclubs until 4 or 5 in the morning. Like that's just what you do. It's
the culture. It's just the culture. And that's, we try to make sure, and wine, especially with pairing with food, it creates that kind of rounded off experience with cultures and countries like Portugal or Italy or France, where these different wine making processes are very amplified throughout the people and the locals. So that's why, with the food, in countries like this, we try to make sure to include something that has a winery. And not everybody likes alcohol. Not everybody loves wine. And we understand that, which is why we don't put it on every tour. But sometimes, with countries like this, we try to incorporate that to make it a rounded off experience, if that makes sense.
Can I just add something, Ellie? Because when you were going through each tour that you have, and they're amazing. And something that I actually took out of my talk because it was taking up too much time, but it was this. I grew up with my dad. I traveled with my parents a little bit, but my dad would go. He was also a bit shy, but he actually would go and make friends and talk to the person. We never, like when we were traveling with my dad, we always ate out, but he became friends with more than one server when we were traveling. So he would bridge that. And that's how I learned about being curious and wanting to know the stories behind the person. So I like to cook when I'm traveling, but going to the restaurants, I would just invite you to don't hesitate to get to know the person or ask questions. And, my dad got to know the guy at a bar, I remember. And next thing you know, we're going to his family's Kona coffee plantation. And there was the guy at the so I thought that was normal. And I grew up like that. But I think it's just this finding that connection with people through food.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this was my way that I shared, but it can happen in so many different ways. And if you do listen to podcasts, for example, then you'll have a richer experience with that. If you do the marinating, because when you go have the cooking class in Vietnam, you can ask. You've gone another level, right? You can sort of take off another layer. I just want to add that in there.
Yeah. Absolutely. No. And that's why we're doing this, right? Because there's, like I said, our ideologies coincide in these ways where, like you said, if you're going to have the experience at the cooking class in Portugal or Vietnam or where it may be, if you've marinated in it, you've listened to these podcasts and you've done this, you will have a richer experience there because you're taking that extra step at that extra leveling up, I guess you can say, to know, oh, I actually, heard something about this on a podcast. Is this how you do it in your culture? Because this is how he did it in his culture when I listened to the so it's all about those layering experiences. And I really, really love those steps and that ideology because it does provide you with a more balanced, fuller experience in the culture. So I love that you added that in there. Never apologize. Moving forward from Portugal, we do have, this is one of the 2 Italian tours we have in 2025, and it's a tour of Venice and the surrounding lakes of the region. And of course, how are you going to go to Italy without taking a pasta cooking class? That's just, we had to do it. And then we have a Venetian food tour with tastings. And then of course you have your every breakfast included with 2 lunches and 2 dinners. And the reason we did this, again, because it's Italy, we didn't want to limit you too much. We didn't want to kind of pigeonhole where where you're going to go and this and that. So there's lots of opportunities to, bend. See, I'm using the lingo. There's lots of opportunities to bend and to move around and to see, what's out there. What do you like? What does your roommate like who you're traveling with? Are we going to try each other's dish? Let's get a dish where both of us can kind of do half and half. So we like to give opportunities for that experience. Venice and the lakes is very close to my heart personally. I'm Northern Italian, so my mother and grandmother are in Venice as we speak right now. They're there, and they were traveling around Italy for the past 3 weeks, and they're coming home Friday. So I'm excited to. They always have some sort of olive oil or wine or seasonings, lots of seasonings, pastas that they come home with. So I'm excited for that. Oh yeah, it's incredible. And she, my nonna she's kind of the powerhouse when it comes to my culinary background. There's certain things that I genuinely can't order out because my nonna makes it a specific way. And right. I like risotto. Risotto is something that's very hard to kind of do over and over the same kind of way. And my nonna, she has her way, and it's, to me, the best way. So it's hard to kind of order different things like that. But
Yeah.
yes, I hope they're having a great. Have you been to Italy, Paula?
Oh yeah, I love Italy. So I'm trying to, so again, the backpacking tour of 1991, had a good time in Italy. But then the next time was when I had an 8-month-old, and unbeknownst to me, I was pregnant with my second one. They're 13 months apart, but I had no idea I was pregnant. And we were with friends, again, living in New Zealand. My parents became very good friends with an Italian couple. And Katie, anyway, that's a whole other story. Katie's New Zealander, but she's lived in Italy most of her married life. She came with us, and Katie kept saying to my mom, gosh, I think Paula's eating too much of the Parmigiano. She's getting, because I was getting bigger and bigger, and I was running up the hill and trying. So anyway, my younger one, Spencer, I mean, he's a 6 foot, 16-year-old now, but his nickname is Little Parmigiano because of that.
Oh, that's awesome. See, these are the stories I love to hear. And this is like the cult, how you intertwine the culture with the experience. And it's like, that is so cute because unbeknownst to you, there was a little bit of Parmesan in there.
There was, exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
when I was
that's
back
awesome.
again, 2016, I think. And anyway, yeah, it's amazing there. I actually I follow the musician, one of my favorites, all-time artists, Sting, and his wife, because they have a vineyard in Tuscany, and it's really fun to follow them and their life there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to look more into that because Sting and Italy are something you wouldn't at the top of your head kind of put together, but
Exactly.
clearly it works. Clearly it's a great pairing. So I'd love to do more research on that. This is our Tuscany food and wine tour. So this one is really focused on the food and wine, of course. That is the tour. And of course you're going to have another pasta cooking class because again, how can you go here without it? And then you'll have a Tuscan cooking class as well, with a visit to a cheese producer with a tasting and a traditional Italian picnic. Of course, these aren't the only inclusions. I just didn't have all the space in the world to type out everything. So I do want to say that this one is meant to be absolutely gorgeous. There's been a lot of interest from our members on this one. Like I said, Tuscany is one of the most renowned kind of places in Italy for their food and their cooking and the process they have when it comes to their food and their wine. I've personally never been to Tuscany, unfortunately, but maybe whoever the tour host is will do a trade with me. And I'll be able to kind of sneak my nose in there. But I am fortunate enough to be going on our Dolomites tour next year. That is actually where my mother lives. She actually just got residency there a couple days ago. So I'm super excited about that. But getting back to this, yeah, I think that this one is our most ultimate gastronomy experience that we have for 2025 for our members. And I think working with you, Paula, if our members are showing the interest, having a private session for our members with your Italian host,
Yes.
to get them marinated, to kind of get them ready for this experience. So I would love to know, from Umbrio, is she you said
She's from Umbria, yeah, and she so there's also a podcast episode with her too, so it could be really interesting because you could go beyond, you can really ask her questions, listen to the podcast, do the class. And again, Melissa is yeah, she's fun. I always said she could have been a comedian and have her own stand-up cooking class show, but she's very much passionate about her culture, and it's part of her everyday life. And she's from Umbria, and she also has lots of tips for the Puglia region as well. So we always try and share. She always shares, oh, you got to go to this one little place here, and this is where we get our pizza and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, she's great.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so I would love to as we move forward into the summer and into the year, talk about organizing something for our members and your viewers as well, to come together and have a open discussion. Maybe is the way we do it is through Zoom, is how you guys do it, where everybody kind of has that ability to put their stories on the table and their influences and to collaborate with one another, because the
Yeah.
connection of the Women's Travel Club and of In My Kitchen is a very important pillar of, I
Right.
think, two businesses.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited to keep moving forward together in terms
Yeah,
of
me
these
too.
kind of opportunities.
Yeah, I know exactly what we would do. The ricotta gnocchi and her nonna's pollo and porchetta, and then the fennel salad is, yeah, it's like, I would love to just have everybody come into my kitchen.
Right? Honestly, I'm ready. I'll book a flight. It's only a 7-hour plane ride from the east to the west coast over in Canada here. So, but anyways, I really, really am happy that you had reached out, and Paula's known about the Women's Travel Club for a little bit now, but she was waiting for the right time to make herself known to us, and I think you really hit the nail on the head there, Paula, because this is, I think, especially with the tours we have in 2025, this is a great pairing, the two of us together, to kind of marinate our members and, share our experiences pre and post tour. So
Yeah, there's a whole post, like, don't even get me started on, so, well, I'm just gonna say a little teaser for the next one. But one of the things I loved, and I did it when I was younger, especially, is invite friends over, and they get an invite that's themed from where I just been, and I like to bring some of the pottery and dishes home, and so then we have a night of enjoying what I just had experienced, and I just love sort of tying it all up with friends over for a meal to share with them some of my favorites. Yeah.
that's awesome. That's so fun. I should have done that with India.
Oh yeah.
That would have been a good one to do. But now I know I have the Peru Salcantay trek in September. So maybe I'll come home with some special teas and things
Yeah.
like that, special food and dishes.
You'll be in Cusco to start. So I'm trying to remember the Cusco sour. Is that it? I've got it.
Yes,
Yeah,
there's a
drink.
specific drink that you're meant to have to help acclimatize actually uh,
Yeah.
in the cult and in the atmosphere. Sorry, and I see I'm the tour host on this trip, and I should know this. So it's just not coming
You know
up.
what? When you get back, let's do a podcast. Well, no, because you're not. I have to find someone from Peru, but you'll
Yeah,
know
I know.
somebody from there, and we'll do a podcast interview.
Yeah, I'll be on the hunt. I'll be on
Yes.
the but with that being said, I don't see any questions here, but I do want to say, like, we both have Women's Travel Club and In My Kitchen have the Facebook groups where you can post, interact, comment, question, share anything you so please. And I know, Paula, if you have a link to your Facebook group, if you want, do you want to send it to me and I can push it out to our members?
Sure. Yeah,
That's
sure.
great. So that's
Okay.
what I'll do. I'll get the link for Paula's Facebook group. I'll push it out to our members so that you guys have access to that platform as well. And I know I can speak for myself here when I say I'm almost always available to chat. Paula, I know your life is a bit more busier than mine at the moment.
I'm gonna put my email in the. I'll send it to you as well. But yeah, totally available. Make sure I
Yes.
spelled her. Yeah, yeah, love it. I can talk like this for all day. Yeah.
That's me too. I know, and I don't want to take up too much more of our members' time. We're at an hour now, which I think is a perfect time stamp to kind of wrap things up if there's no other questions or comments. So again, thank you so much for being here. I think this was a huge success, especially being my first talk back in a few weeks. So thanks again for being my first target, my first guest.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
really enjoyed it, Allie, and yeah, it was. I'm glad that you made this happen and could see the similarities between what we're doing.
for sure. And I'm glad you reached out. I mean, it's a collaboration, and without your message, we wouldn't be here. So, or your email. So, thanks for reaching out. And for our members that are here and rewatching, possibly on YouTube or Facebook, thank you guys for being here. I hope that you really enjoyed it. I know Diane loves this concept, so there's plenty more where that came from, Diane. I'll say that. This is just our first, hopefully, talk together, and we can kind of spiral out into a future partnership, which is great.
Would
So
love to. Yeah.
awesome. With that being said, I am going to end the stream now. So again, thank you everybody. And I really look forward to our next week's travel talk. I will be having on guests from our Mexico tour coming up next year, which is our Day of the Dead cultural tour. And I am actually the tour host on that one as well. So I'm super excited to ask a bunch of questions for you guys and be involved in the conversation. So thank you, Paula. And with that, goodbye, everybody.